U.S. President Donald Trump has signed 2 bills into law that back Hong Kong's pro-democracy movement. American sanctions can now be imposed on Chinese and Hong Kong officials deemed responsible for human rights abuses, and Hong Kong's special trade status will be reviewed every year. The territory's leaders say it'll damage relations with the U.S., while China's expressed extreme regret over the move, saying it will respond with firm countermeasures. Patty Cohane's been following developments from Washington.
This could be a powerful tool if the president chose to use it. It's not at all clear he's going to. Not only does it let him sanction people in Hong Kong and China, but it's that special trade status that could be so critical if the Secretary of State was to come back and say, no, China is not going along with the policy. Hong Kong doesn't have enough independence. They could basically take that status away. That would have a huge impact on trade. But bigger than that, could send a signal to financial markets, to investors, that Hong Kong is not a safe place to park your money. So that is the big concern. It does seem unlikely that they're going to take these steps. The other bill that the president signed, more concretely, it stops American companies from giving or selling anything to Hong Kong authorities that could be used against crowds, such as tear gas canisters or rubber bullets. So exactly what the president is going to do, it's not clear. Congress has given him this authority. He has sent the signal that he doesn't want to use it. So we'll wait to see what the Secretary of State says. But for this president, the big concern is the trade war. He needs rural America to get reelected. And right now, they're really hurting because of this trade war.
In a moment, we'll talk to Sarah Clark in Hong Kong. First, let's go to Andrew Thomas in Beijing. And of course, Andrew, the timing here, this is all happening while the U.S. and China have been in this extended trade war. So what is the reaction out of Beijing?
Well, the practical measures and the potential sanctions are one thing. But what Beijing has already reacted to is the mere consent by Donald Trump to this US Senate legislation and the symbolism that all that represents. And what Beijing has said already, first thing Thursday, is that this is encouraging the violence in Hong Kong. They've put out a very long and very strong statement. I'll read little bits of it here. The US has been disregarding facts and distorting truth. It openly backed violent criminals who rampantly smashed facilities, set fire and assaulted innocent civilians. And they are suggesting that with the formal passing of this act, it will give encouragement to the protesters in Hong Kong, quite apart from any practical measure that sanctions in time may have. Now, they're also saying that this isn't just about Hong Kong either. This is all part of a concerted effort, Beijing feels, by the US lawmakers to undermine China as a whole. So this statement goes on. This act will only further expose the malicious and hegemonic nature of US intentions to the Chinese people. Its very aim is to undermine Hong Kong's stability and disrupt the Chinese nation's endeavour to realise the Great Renewal. So a really furious statement here, which concludes with a pretty, well, not very veiled threat at all, that China will take countermeasures. It's unclear as yet what those countermeasures will be. The statement says that the US will bear all responsibility for those consequences. We may find out a little more in 2 hours' time when the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here in Beijing holds its daily press conference. But for them to have put out a statement that long and that strong and that swiftly really says how angry Beijing is about this.
Okay, Andrew Thomas with the latest from Beijing. Now, Hong Kong pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong says the U.S. has shown it will prioritize human rights over big business.
For U.S. President signed on the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act, that's the remarkable achievement of all the Hong Kongers, no matter Democrats or Republicans. The new bipartisan consensus from both the U.S. administration and the Congress is to stand with Hong Kong to prioritize human rights and democracy and not being overridden by the trade negotiation.
Sarah Clark joins us live from Hong Kong. So let's put all this in some context. What else are you hearing there about the reaction in Hong Kong? Obviously, Joshua Wong, is pretty enthusiastic about it.
Well, the pro-democracy movement will consider this a victory in light of the ongoing protests that have been here for around 6 months. This is a small win, but certainly one that they will embrace. The government, however, has responded strongly. It's objected to this act now becoming law. It says it deeply regrets the decision by Donald Trump to sign the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. They say it disregards the genuine concerns of the people here in this city, and it also interferes in Hong Kong's internal affairs. So the government here is pretty much told the US to butt out of the matters that concern the residents here. The words they've used, unnecessary, unwarranted, and will harm relations between Hong Kong and the United States. It also says that it sends the wrong message to the people they've described as violent protesters. Now, on Thursday, we have another rally expected tonight. And this rally was all about the Hong Kong Human Rights and Democracy Act. And the fact that Donald Trump has signed it on the same day will no doubt boost morale for the protest movement and could also attract bigger numbers as a result.
Okay, Sarah Clark with the latest from Hong Kong. Sarah, thank you. Joseph Chang is a political scientist and pro-democracy campaigner who's the founder of Alliance for True Democracy. He joins us via Skype from Hong Kong. So let me ask you about what Sarah was just saying, that this has the potential to really motivate the protests and the pro-democracy protesters. Do you agree with that?
Yes, this is a very significant morale booster for the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong. It also indicates that the international community, including the American public, will assess seriously the nature of the Chinese Communist regime. Public opinion pressure regarding human rights issues in China will probably become rather significant in the presidential campaign to come in the United States. But we also have to realize that there is still considerable room of maneuver for Donald Trump and for China at this stage. The State Council will send its report to U.S. Congress in 1 year's time. The U.S. Congress then makes recommendations to the White House. The White House then decides what actions to take. So Chinese authorities are more concerned with the public opinion trends in the United States rather than with concrete actions on the part of the Donald Trump administration today. That is exactly why they have not responded with serious retaliatory measures at the moment.
So you mentioned the presidential election and how human rights and things like that might be an issue, but often what is more of an issue, no matter what the country, is the economy. And the trade war that's going on with China has not been good for farmers in the U.S. Might you see a possibility of Donald Trump, although he has signed this into law, not really putting his weight behind it because he has other concerns?
Agreed. I think the trade negotiations are going on, and both sides are very serious with the negotiations, and they do not intend to let the Hong Kong issue to adversely affect the negotiations. The Hong Kong issue is not new today. It has been going on for 6 months, and trade negotiations have also been going on. Both sides do want to have a trade agreement, an intermediary stage agreement, to satisfy domestic needs. But both leaders are concerned that they must not be seen to be making too many concessions to the other side. And the other problem, of course, is the lack of mutual trust between the two governments.
What realistically, as you pointed out, these protests have been going on for 6 months. And the initial things that the protesters want, they got, but then the list expanded. What realistically do the protesters, this pro-democracy movement, hope to get out of China?
The protesters and the pro-democracy movement understand that China probably will stick to its hard line on Hong Kong, and therefore you cannot expect much from the Chinese leadership nor from the Carrie Lam administration. Most Hong Kong people, however, feel that they have their baseline concerning human rights, freedom, liberty, rule of law, and so on, and they believe that they should articulate the position now that they have the opportunity. They would continue their protests to expose the lack of legitimacy and representativeness on the part of the Carrie Lam administration, and to demonstrate that you cannot govern effectively in this way.
Joseph Chang joining us from Hong Kong. Thank you very much, sir.